If you ever visit Dalat, people will tell you to see the Lake of Sighs in the morning. Go when the fog is still thin. Go when the first sunlight touches the surface of the water. Go when the pine trees stand perfectly still, their shadows falling across the lake like dark fingers. In the morning, it is beautiful. Sad, maybe. Quiet, definitely. But safe enough for tourists to take photos, drink coffee, and leave with a story they think they understand. But the old people in Dalat have a different warning. Do not walk around the Lake of Sighs after midnight. Not because the trail is dark, not because the ground is slippery, and not because you might fall into the water. They say that when the fog gets thick enough, you can hear someone crying from the lake. At first, the crying sounds far away. Then it comes closer, closer, until you realize the crying is no longer coming from the water. It is right behind you. And the worst part is not the crying. The worst part is the footsteps that come with it. One step from you. One step from the person walking beside you. And one third step. At first, that third step is soft, almost polite. But the longer you walk, the more it matches your rhythm. As if whoever is behind you has been there for a very long time. And only tonight, in the fog of the Lake of Sighs, have you finally learned how to hear them. My name is Nam. I am 32 years old, and I live in Dalat, the mountain city people call the City of a Thousand Flowers. By day, I ride for a delivery app. By night, when the money is right, I record field audio for horror channels, folklore videos, and travel documentaries about haunted places. If somebody needs the sound of wind moving through pine trees, I can get it. If they need tires on a wet mountain road, an old wooden door creaking open, rain tapping on a rusted roof, or a lonely dog barking in a fog-covered alley, they call me. I have recorded abandoned villas, empty cemeteries, old hotels, tunnels, forests, and hill roads where drivers swear they saw someone standing in the mist. And for years, I told everyone the same thing. Dalat is not haunted as much as people think. Dalat just has fog. And fog knows how to make people afraid. I believed that, until the night I accepted a recording job at the Lake of Sighs. The Lake of Sighs, known locally as Ho Than Tho, is a real place east of Dalat. Tourists know it for its quiet water, its pine forest, and the tragic romance people have attached to it for generations. The old legend tells of Hoang Tung and Mai Nuang. The young man goes away to war. The young woman hears he has died. Heartbroken, she takes her own life by the lake. In some versions, he comes back too late and dies in grief. It is a sad story, a beautiful story if you hear it on a sunny morning from a guide holding a little microphone. But the story I heard that night was not beautiful. It was not romantic, and it was not the story tourists were supposed to hear.
The job came on a Friday afternoon, right after the rain stopped. I was sitting in a small coffee shop on Phan Dinh Phung Street, wiping down my old recorder, when my phone buzzed with a new email. The sender name was strange. MN Archife. There was no full name, no phone number, no company signature, just a short message. I need you to record the Lake of Sighs after midnight. I need fog, pine trees, water, and if possible, crying. Payment, 5 million dong. Meeting point, the side gate near the pine trail. Time, 11:40 tonight. A guide named Ni will meet you. I read it 3 times. 5 million dong for one night of audio was too much. Usually, a job like that paid a few $100,000, maybe 1 or 2 million if it involved a dangerous location or a long ride. But the Lake of Sighs was not far. It was not difficult, and it certainly was not worth 5 million, unless the person hiring me knew something I did not. I almost deleted the email. Then my mother called. Her voice was rough from coughing. The weather had turned cold, and every winter in Dalat seemed to crawl straight into her lungs. "Nam," she asked, "are you working tonight?" "Maybe," I said. "I got a job offer." "Don't ride too late. The fog has been thick these past few nights." I listened to the silence after her words. I knew that silence. "Mom," I asked, "do you need money for medicine?" She did not answer right away. My mother never asked for money directly. She just called at the exact moment she could no longer hide that she needed it. I looked at the email again. 5 million. One night. I replied, "I accept, but I need 50% up front." 3 minutes later, my bank app showed a transfer of 2.5 million dong. No note, no call. Only one more email. "Do not walk around the lake alone." That evening, I went home to pick up extra batteries, a wind cover, a power bank, and my thick jacket. My mother was sitting by the window, rolling a piece of wool between her fingers. Outside, the alley was wet from rain, and the yellow streetlights had smeared across the stones like melted wax. I tried to move quietly, but she turned as soon as I entered. "Where are you going?" "To record some audio." "Where?" I do not know why I told her the truth. "The Lake of Sighs." The wool fell from her hand. At first, I thought the name had simply startled her. It is not exactly a cheerful place to mention at night, but the expression on her face was not surprise. It was fear. Old fear. The kind that has been buried for so long that it no longer looks like fear until someone says the wrong name. "You cannot go there," she said. "Mom, it is just work. There will be a guide. I record for a few hours, then I come home." I said no. "You believe in those ghost stories now?" I asked. Her eyes went red. "I do not believe in ghosts." "Then what are you afraid of?" She looked at me for so long I thought she was finally going to tell me something. Something she had been carrying for years. But in the end, she only said, "Your father used to work near that lake." I froze. My mother almost never talked about my father. I knew only a few things about him. His name was Tran Bay. He had once worked as a security guard somewhere in Dalat. One rainy night more than 20 years ago, he disappeared. No letter, no message, no return. My mother always said he was not worth remembering. I believed her. For more than 20 years, I believed her. "Dad worked at the Lake of Sighs?" I asked. She did not answer. She turned away from the window. "If you hear someone call your name behind you," she said, "do not turn around." I frowned. Why does everyone keep warning me about what is behind me? She looked at me then, and her face had gone pale. "Because whoever calls you may not want you to turn around." She paused. "They may only want to know whether you are still alive." I reached the side gate at 11:32 that night. Dalat at night has its own kind of cold. It is not sharp. It is not dry. It is soft, wet, patient. It settles into your clothes and waits for your skin to notice. I rode past closed goose houses, dark coffee shops, empty sidewalks, and lines of black pine trees leaning over the road. The closer I got to the lake, the thicker the fog became. The main gate was locked. I followed the email instructions and circled to the side gate near the pine trail. It was a narrow entrance half hidden behind old fencing and fallen needles. A faded sign hung crooked from one post. I killed the engine. The moment the motor went quiet, I heard the pine forest breathing. Not wind. Breathing. A long, low sound passing from one treetop to the next, like the forest itself was letting out a sigh. I checked my recorder. Full battery, empty memory card, external microphone working. 11:39. No one was there. 11:40. The fog behind the gate shifted. A young woman stepped out. She wore a gray wool coat, a white scarf, and her hair tied low behind her neck. In her hand was a small flashlight, but she did not turn it on. "Nam?" she asked. "That's me. Are you Nee?" She nodded. "You came earlier than I expected. You are not scared? Standing out here alone at this hour?" She glanced over my shoulder. It was quick. So quick I almost missed it. "I am used to it," she said. I turned. Behind me were only the dark road and my motorbike. "Used to the lake?" I asked. "No." She opened the side gate. "Used to the person walking behind people." I did not like that answer. I liked it even less when the gate opened without making a sound. It was old iron, rusted hinges, wet metal. It should have screamed when she pushed it. Instead, it opened silently, as if someone on the other side had been holding it ready. I followed her in. The trail around the lake was darker than I expected. Even with the city lights somewhere behind us, the pine forest seemed to swallow everything. My flashlight reached only a few steps ahead. Then the lake appeared through the fog. Flat, black, still. I had been there many times during the day. Back then, it was a tourist place. Horse carts, couples taking photos, hot corn, coffee, families laughing under umbrellas. But at night, it was not a tourist place. It looked like an eye opened in the middle of the forest. An eye that did not blink. "Start recording," Nee said. I pressed record. The tiny red light came on. 1 second. The first thing the recorder captured was wind. The second was my breathing. The third. I stopped. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Nee stood beside me, staring at the water. "Hear what?" "I think someone is crying." She said nothing. I held my breath. It was very faint. I could not tell if it came from the lake, the trees, or some empty place between them. A thin, broken sob like a thread being pulled tight and cut again. I removed my headphones. The sound vanished. I put them back on. The crying returned. The skin on the back of my neck went cold. "Probably wind frequency," I said. "Wind through pine needles, reflection off the water, sensitive microphone. It can happen." "You don't need to explain it to me," Nee said. "What?" "People who do not believe usually explain more than people who do." She started walking. We have to complete the full circle. The trail was wet and slippery. Pine needles stuck to the soles of my shoes. I held the recorder in one hand and kept one headphone over my right ear. With my left ear, I heard the real world. With my right ear, I heard the world through the microphone. They were not the same world. Outside the headphones, the lake was quiet. Inside them, it was full of sound. Water moving when the surface looked still. Branches brushing together when there was no wind. Wings beating somewhere far above us. And sometimes, crying. Not clearly male or female, not old or young, just grief turned into sound. After about 10 minutes, I asked, "Nee, how long have you worked here?" "A while." "Do you always guide people around the lake at night?" "No." "Then why tonight?" She was quiet for a few steps. Then she said, "Because the email came to me before it came to you." I stopped walking. "You got an email from MN Archive too?" She nodded. "What did it say?" "Guide Nam around the lake. Do not let him turn around when he hears the third set of footsteps."
Ist hier.
"That is not funny." "I do not make jokes," she said. "Who sent it?" "I thought you knew." I pulled out my phone. No signal. Not one bar. I tried opening my email. Nothing loaded. "Does this place always lose signal?" I asked. Nee looked at the lake. "Only when the lake does not want you to call anyone." "You talk like a haunted house employee. Think that if it helps." I was about to answer when a crack burst through my headphones. Not a branch breaking. Not static. It sounded like someone bending a finger until the joint popped, right next to the microphone. I stopped and looked around. "What is it now?" Nee asked. I raised a hand for silence. In the headphones, after the crack, there was a flat stretch of quiet. Then footsteps. 1, 2, 1, 2. I looked down at my own feet. I was standing still. Nee was standing still. But in the headphones, the footsteps continued. 1, 2, 1, 2. Slow, even, close. As if someone was walking around us. I took the headphones off. The footsteps vanished. I put them back on. They returned closer than before. "Nee," I whispered. "Yes."
Come closer.
She looked at me, and for the first time that night I saw pity in her face. "Do not be afraid of those footsteps," she said. "Why not?" "Because they are not behind you yet." My spine went cold. "Yet." She looked down at the wet trail. I followed her gaze. There were 2 sets of footprints in the mud. Mine with the wide grooves of my running shoes. Hers smaller and thinner. And 3 meters behind us, a third footprint had just appeared. A man's footprint. Left foot. Pressed deep into the wet ground. Fresh. But there was no man standing there. I do not remember how many steps I backed away. I only remember Nee grabbing my wrist. Her hand was freezing. "Do not run," she said. "Someone is following us." I know. You know, and you still want me to keep walking? If we go back to the gate now, we have to walk against the path. So, she looked into the fog behind us. It likes people who walk against the path. I muttered a curse under my breath. I had recorded plenty of sounds that scared other people. Empty houses creaking because the wood expanded. Wind hitting a broken window and sounding like a moan. Cats running over sheet metal roofs like someone crawling. Once, I recorded a woman singing inside an abandoned villa. Later, I discovered the microphone had picked up a distorted radio signal. But I had no explanation for a fresh footprint appearing in the mud where nobody stood. Keep going, Nee said. There is an old shed up ahead. What old shed? A storage shed. They used to keep rescue equipment there. It was abandoned years ago. Why do we need to go there? You need to hear the tape. What tape? She did not answer. She let go of my wrist and walked ahead. I stood there for one more second. Behind me, in the fog, the crying started again. This time, I did not hear it through the headphones. I heard it with my own ears. Close enough that I felt damp breath touch the back of my neck. A woman's voice sobbed, "Do not let him believe that his mother abandoned him." I spun around. No one. Only fog. And the third man's footprint had moved closer. The old shed sat at the northern edge of the lake, hidden behind tall pines. It was a small wooden structure with a low tin roof and a door tied shut with wire. The paint had peeled away in green flakes. Nee untwisted the wire. "How do you know how to open it?" I asked. "Someone showed me." "Who?" "The person walking behind you." I did not want to hear anything else. I shone my flashlight inside. The smell of mold came out in a heavy wave. There were cracked plastic bins, torn life jackets, a broken paddle, and faded warning signs leaning against the wall. In the far corner, there was a small metal cabinet. Locked. Nee crouched, reached under the cabinet, and pulled out a key wrapped in a blackened plastic bag.
Ist er hier?
"You have been here before." She shook her head. "Then how did you know there was a key?" "I dreamed it." I laughed once, dry and humorless. "Of course you did." She opened the cabinet. Inside was a tin cookie box, the kind every family used to keep sewing needles or old money in. The lid was rusted. On top, a strip of yellowed tape had been pressed flat. Black marker had been written across it. "For Nam, when he is old enough." I stepped back. For a moment, every sound around me disappeared. No wind. No water.
No crying.
Only my heartbeat, slamming so hard it hurt. "Nee," I said. My voice had gone rough. "Why is my name on that?" She looked at the box. "Because it was left for you." "By who?" She touched the lid. "Your father." I snatched the box from her.
No.
"Open it." "My father left us more than 20 years ago." "No," she whispered. "He did not leave." I did not want to believe her. But my hands opened the box anyway. Inside was a cassette tape, an old photograph, a small silver bracelet for a child, and a folded piece of paper. I picked up the photo first. It showed a man in a security uniform standing by the lake in early morning fog. He was in his 30s, square-faced, short-haired, with tired eyes. I recognized him immediately. My father, Tran Bay. But it was not him that made the room tilt. It was the woman standing next to him. She wore a white sweater. Her hair was long. In her arms was a baby wrapped in cloth. The corner of the photo had faded, but her face was clear. Young.
Sad.
And so much like me that I almost dropped the picture. I turned slowly. Nee stood beside me, pale in the flashlight beam. "Who are you?" I asked. She said nothing. "Who are you?" Outside the shed, footsteps approached. 1, 2, 1, 2. This time, the recorder was not involved. The footsteps were outside the door. Nee looked toward the fog. "You have to hear the tape before he comes in." "Who?" I whispered. "The one who does not want you to know." I pulled a small cassette player from my bag. I always carried one in case a job involved old material. My hands shook so hard it took almost a minute to load the tape. I pressed play. At first, there was only hiss. Then a man's voice came through. Rough, tired, familiar in a way that hurt before I understood why. "Nam," the voice said. "If you are hearing this, it means I did not come back in time." I could not breathe. It was my father's voice. "I am sorry you had to grow up inside a lie," he continued. "But I had no other way to keep you safe. That night, I was on duty at the lake. It was raining hard. The fog was so thick I could barely see the lamps. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a woman crying near the water. The tape crackled. I ran down and found a young woman holding a baby. She was soaked. The baby had a silver bracelet on his wrist, engraved with the name Nam. She told me that if anyone asked, I must not give the child back to them. She said they would build another story, one that made her look like a mad woman destroyed by love. My father's voice dropped lower. Her name was Mai Nuong. I looked at Nee. She lowered her head. Not the Mai Nuong from the legend, my father said on the tape. Not a girl waiting for a soldier, just a real young woman who sold flowers at the market. She trusted the wrong man. His name was Tung. When she became pregnant, he disappeared. When he came back, it was not to claim the child. It was to take away the proof that could ruin his new life. The tape hissed again. I brought you to Han. She could not have children, and she loved you the moment she held you. I told her I had to go back for the young woman. But when I returned to the lake, all I found was a white scarf caught on a pine branch. In the mud below, there were a man's footprints. I heard metal clink softly on the recording. I kept evidence, but the man had money. He had friends. He made people believe the girl had killed herself because of heartbreak, just like the old stories people already told about the lake. After that, whenever anyone asked, they only said, "It is the Lake of Sighs. Tragic love stories happen there." I felt my throat close. I did not abandon you, the voice said. I was forced into silence. If one day you hear footsteps behind you at the lake, do not be afraid. It may be me. I have been walking behind you since that night. I was only afraid you would turn around too soon and see what you were not ready to see. The tape distorted. My father's final words came through thin and broken. Nam, do not trust the man named Tung. The tape stopped. At the same moment, the shed door opened. An old man stood outside. He was in his 60s, wearing a thick jacket and a black wool hat. His face was hollow, but his eyes were sharp. I recognized him.
Mr. Sao Loi.
An old security guard from the lake. I had seen him several times during the day, sitting near the parking area, drinking tea and telling tourists the story of Hong Tung and my Nuong in a flat, practiced voice. He always smiled. That night, he was not smiling. He looked at the cassette player in my hand. "You should not have opened that," he said. I stepped back. "How did you know it was here?" He sighed. "Because I helped your father hide it." I stared at him. He stood behind me, silent. Mr. Sao came inside. "I did not hurt your father," he said, "and I did not hurt that girl." "Then who did?" He looked at me for a long time. "A dead man." "You are lying."
No.
He died 14 years ago in an accident. But what he did not die with him. Stayed here, in this lake, in the stories people told, in the way they turned a real woman into the shadow of a legend. I tightened my fist around the tape. "Where is my father?" Mr. Sao looked out toward the water. "The night your father came back to gather more proof, he met that man by the north bank. They fought. Your father fell into the lake." My chest went numb. "Where is his body?" Mr. Sao did not answer. "Where is my father's body?" He pointed into the fog. "Under the twin pines." I ran. Ni called after me, but I did not stop. I ran through fog, over wet leaves, along the slick trail with the black lake to my left. The wind rose. Pine branches hissed above me. Behind me came footsteps. 1, 2, 1, 2. I did not know if it was Mr. Sao or Ni or something else entirely. I only knew I had to reach the twin pines. They stood at the northern edge of the lake, two trunks twisted together and leaning over the water like two people holding each other as they fell. Tourists took pictures there during the day. They called it the Lover's Pine. That night, it looked like two dry arms reaching out of the ground. I dropped to my knees and dug around the roots with my bare hands. Mud, stones, rotten leaves, roots, nothing else. I dug harder. My nails tore, blood mixed with wet soil. Ni reached me and grabbed my shoulder. "Stop! My father is here. You will not find him with your hands." "Then why bring me here?" She looked at the roots. "Not to find his body." "Then what?" She bent down and lifted something small from between the roots. A piece of dark metal. I took it from her. It was half of a security name tag. Only 2 letters were still readable. Tran B. I started to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically. The tears simply came, hot and painful. For more than 20 years, I believed my father had left us. I hated him. I hated him so much I refused to look at his photo. When people asked where my father was, I said, dead. Turned out I had been right. I just never knew. A hand settled on my shoulder. I thought it was knee, but the hand was heavier, warmer, rougher. I stopped breathing. Behind me, a man's voice whispered, "Do not turn around, son." I froze. That voice. I had heard it on the tape. Dad. Fog thickened around us. Nee stood in front of me, eyes wide. She heard it too. The man's voice said, "You are grown now." Every part of me wanted to turn around. But I remembered my mother's warning, the email, Nee's instructions, my father's words on the tape. Do not turn around too soon. I lowered my head. You did not abandon me? The hand squeezed my shoulder once. No. One word. Enough to break more than 20 years inside me. I cried like a child. Then, from the lake, a woman's voice rose into the fog. Not crying anymore. Singing. A lullaby, faint and distant, but so tender it hurt. I looked at Nee. She was crying. No, she was not crying. Her face was beginning to dissolve into the fog. I stood in panic. Nee. She stepped back. The white scarf at her throat lifted, though there was no wind. Nee, what is happening? She smiled. It was the saddest smile I had ever seen. My name is not Nee. I shook my head. No. I only borrowed that name so you would not be afraid. Who are you? She looked at the small silver bracelet in my hand. On it was one engraved word. Nam. Her voice trembled. When you were born, I named you Nam because I wanted you to grow like a pine tree, still standing in wind, still alive in fog. I could not speak. The young woman in front of me was no longer Nee, not my guide, not a stranger from an email. She was the woman in the photograph. The woman who had held the baby by the lake. The woman people had turned into a tragic rumor so nobody would ask who she really was. Mai Nuong, he whispered. She smiled. Do not call me by the name in the legend. I was just Mai. I stepped toward her. She stepped back. I am sorry you grew up not knowing. Where have you been all these years? She looked toward the lake. In the place where crying cannot escape. I broke. I heard you. I know, she said, but I was not crying for that man. She looked at me. I was crying because you passed this lake so many times and did not know I was calling you. I remembered every time I had waited in the parking area while tourists took pictures. Every time I laughed at the old story. Every time the wind through the pines made me sad for no reason. Someone had been calling me all those years. But in daylight, the living are too loud. I could not hear her. Mr. Sao reached the twin pines a few minutes later. When he saw Mai, he took off his wool hat. His old face folded in on itself. You are still here, he whispered. Mai looked at him.
Inclus-moi.
He lowered his head. I am sorry. You kept your promise. Not well enough, he said. I let your son hate his father for more than 20 years. But you kept the tape. Mr. Sao began to cry. An old man crying in the fog beside a lake already full of grief looked both pitiful and terrifying. He turned to me. Your father told me to give it to you only if you came looking on your own. I was not allowed to force the truth on you. If we spoke too early, people would say Han had stolen a dead woman's child. She raised you with her whole life. Your father did not want her destroyed too. My mother,
Han,
the woman who raised me, the woman who tried to stop me from coming here, the woman who had held this secret inside her for decades. I suddenly understood her fear. She had not been afraid of ghosts. She had been afraid that one day I would learn the truth and leave her. I seemed to know what I was thinking. Do not blame Mother Han, she said. She was the one who kept you with the living. I nodded, still crying. What do I do now? I looked out at the lake. Do not let them tell it wrong anymore. You want me to tell this story? Not for revenge. Then why? So people understand that not every cry needs to be made into a legend. Some women do not die because they are weak. They die because no one lets them tell the truth. The wind rose. The lake began to ripple. The pine trees whispered as if hundreds of people had started speaking at once. I stepped back toward the water. I lunged forward. Mom! The hand behind me held my shoulder again. My father's voice said, "Let her go, son." I sobbed. I only just found her. I stood at the edge of the lake. Fog gathered around her feet. You found me long ago, she said. The first time you heard the wind at this lake and felt sad without knowing why. She raised her hand, as if touching my face from across the fog. Nam, do not go back to the world with hatred. The dead do not need hatred. The dead only need to be remembered correctly. I nodded. She smiled. Then the fog covered her. 1 second. 2. 3. When it thinned again, the edge of the lake was empty. Only the white scarf remained on the wet grass. I picked it up. It was cold, but it was not wet. I do not remember how I left the Lake of Sighs. I only remember reaching the side gate when the sky was beginning to turn gray. Mr. Sao walked behind me. Neither of us spoke. My recorder was still running. The memory card was almost full. On the ride home, I had to stop several times because my hands were shaking too badly to control the bike. My mother was waiting by the front door. She did not ask what I had seen. She only looked at the white scarf in my hand. Then she began to cry. I knelt in front of her. For the first time in my life, I said the word with my whole heart. Mom! She held me. I held her back. We cried for a long time. Then she told me everything. She told me about the night my father carried a baby into the house, soaked from rain, his face white with fear. She told me he said, "Save the child first. I am going back for his mother. She told me he never came home. She told me she had wanted to tell me the truth many times, but every time she looked at me sleeping, she was afraid of losing me. I did not blame her. Some lies are born from selfishness, but some are born from love that has run out of choices. My mother had kept me alive. My father had kept me away from a truth I was too young to carry. And the woman under the lake had kept calling for 32 years, waiting until I was old enough to hear. 3 days later, I returned to the Lake of Sighs in daylight. Not to record, not to look for ghosts. I went to the management office, then to the local police. I handed over the cassette, the photograph, the broken name tag, and Mr. Tso's statement. The story was old, too old maybe. Many of the people involved were already dead. Nobody promised that everything would be solved. Nobody promised they would search the bottom of an entire lake because of an old tape. But at least I knew that my parents' story was no longer buried alone in the fog. That afternoon, after most of the tourists had left, I stood beside the Twin Pines. A young guide led a small group along the path. I heard her begin in that familiar voice guides use when a story has been repeated too many times. Long ago, this place was connected to the tragic legend of Ho Than Tho and Mai Nuong. I did not interrupt her. Legends are legends. People need stories to understand why a place feels sad. But now, whenever someone asks me whether the Lake of Sighs is haunted, I do not laugh anymore. I only say, there are people there whose stories were never fully heard. That night, I went home and opened the audio files. I needed to review everything before sending it to the client. But the MN archive email was gone. Not in my inbox. Not in spam. Not in trash. The only thing left was the bank transfer. I opened the first file. Wind. My breathing. Nee's voice. Crying. I opened the second file. The old shed. My voice asking, "Who are you?" The cassette tape. My father's confession. Then I opened the final file. The one from the Twin Pines. I put on my headphones. First, there was only my crying, then Mr. Tso's voice, then wind. But the recorder had not captured Mai's voice. It had not captured my father's voice either. Everything I heard with my heart was gone from the recording. All that remained was pine wind. I moved the cursor to the end of the file. Just when I thought it was over, a tiny sound came through the headphones. Not crying. Not wind. A lullaby. Soft. Close. I held my breath. After the lullaby, a woman's voice whispered, "Nam." I stood up so fast my chair slid backward. The voice continued. "This time, may I walk behind you?" Then came footsteps. One step. A second. The third. But they were no longer frightening. They were slow, peaceful, like a family walking together down a trail covered in pine needles. I took off the headphones. Outside my window, Dalat was sinking into fog again. In the blurred glass, I saw my own reflection. And behind it, two shadows. A man with broad shoulders, standing slightly unevenly as if one leg still hurt. A woman in a white scarf, long hair over her shoulders, one hand resting gently on his arm. I did not turn around. I only looked at their reflections in the glass and whispered, "You are home." The fog outside thickened. The two shadows slowly faded. But before they disappeared, I heard my laugh. A soft laugh. So soft that anyone else might have mistaken it for wind. But I knew better. From that night on, I never accepted another ghost recording job at the Lake of Sighs. But sometimes, when I ride past the road east of Dalat after midnight, I turn off my engine for a few seconds, just to listen to the pines, to the water, to see if anyone is still crying. And the strange thing is, I do not hear crying anymore. Only footsteps very soft behind me. One step from me. One step from my father. One step from my mother. We walk through the fog. No one turns around. No one is left behind. And the Lake of Sighs, for the first time in my life, no longer feels like a place that is sighing. It feels like a place that has finally learned how to breathe out.
If you enjoyed this story, stay with us for more true location horror inspired by real places, old legends, and the shadows people leave behind. Subscribe to Infinite Story Realm, turn on notifications, and tell us in the comments which haunted place you want us to explore next. And if you ever walk beside a quiet lake after midnight, listen carefully before you turn around.